Hello, my name is Joanna Bourke. I'm a Professor Emerita at Birkbeck, but I'm also the author of our history, our 200 years history, and it's called simply Birkbeck, 200 Years of Radical Education for Working People. Today, I want to ask the question, well, who were our founders in 1823? Well, the London Mechanics Institution, which is what Birkbeck used to be called, was founded by patent agent and editor Joseph Clinton Robertson, journalist and economist Thomas Hodgkin, tailor and professional radical Francis Place, prominent Whig politician Henry Brougham, and physician and philanthropist, of course, George Birkbeck. So who were these men? Well, Robertson, he'd been born into a really comfortable, non-conformist family, and he'd chosen a career as a patent agent and editor. Has to be admitted, he was a rather tricky character, but he was also a talented editor and passionate about the empowerment of working men and women. In 1823, he was in his mid-30s then, Robertson founded the popular Mechanics magazine, which was where the call for the establishment of the London Mechanics Institution was first publicised. Okay, Hodgkin. His background was considerably more modest. His father worked at the Chatham naval dockyards, which explains why he was sent to school at the tender age of 12. The Napoleonic Wars, of course, between England and France were underway. And Hodgkin used his experience in the Navy to write a critique, a searing critique of the brutalities of naval life. Now, his second book was equally political. It was an account he did of walking through Germany, in which he contended that the landlord and the capitalist produce nothing. Capital is the product of labor, and profit is nothing but a portion of that produce. Well, in 1823, Hodgkin returned to London to work as a journalist, and he quickly joined Robertson on the Mechanic magazine. This began an intellectually really productive period of his life. He published 3 other radical books in quick succession, all on political economy, and based on the lectures that he gave at the London Mechanics Institution. Karl Marx admired him, claiming not only that Hodgkin was one of the most important modern English economists, but also that his book, Popular Political Economy, had been important in developing his own labor theory of value in the 3rd volume of Capital. Although Hodgkin is relatively unknown today, he really does deserve to be recognized as one of the founders of British socialism. The third protagonist, well, this is Place. Now, Place's familial status was as modest as that as Hodgkin's. He was the son of a tavern keeper. As Place later admitted, his father was, he wrote, a drinking, whoring, gaming, fishing, and fighting type of man. Unlike his son, Place indeed worked hard, and he read widely. At the tender age of 17, he became a breeches maker, eventually setting himself up in Charing Cross, which is why he's known today as the radical tailor of Charing Cross. He was also an atheist and a political activist. Place promoted causes such as birth control, free love, equality between the sexes, sex for pleasure, and regular sexual intercourse for young people. Just remember, this is the 1820s. Heady stuff, indeed. Now, it was Place who raised funds, approached working men's organizations for support, and enlisted the patronage of utilitarian, Whig, and radical politicians for the new London Mechanics Institution. 4th main founder is Brougham. Now, Brougham had not been present at the first meeting of the London Mechanics Institution, and actually he never served on any of its committees. However, he was the institution's leading orator. His interests in educational reform followed from his more general radical politics. As a lawyer by profession, he came to public notice because of his role as the chief advisor to Queen Caroline, the estranged wife of King George IV. By the 1830s, Brougham was Lord Chancellor of Great Britain, where he was an active supporter of the 1832 Reform Act, which radically transformed the electoral system in Britain, and as an active abolitionist, the 1833 Slavery Abolition Act. Crucially, however, his book, entitled Practical Observations upon the Education of the People, addressed to the working classes and their employers. This book became the Bible, if you like, for everyone involved in educating working people. Final main protagonist of our story is, of course, George Birkbeck himself. He was born into this Quaker family, North Yorkshire. He trained as a doctor at the University of Edinburgh's Medical School. He was a personal friend of nearly every single major radical of the time. In 1799, George Birkbeck was invited to teach natural philosophy and chemistry at the Anderson Institution, Glasgow. His interest in the education of working men started when George Birkbeck wanted a particular machine to be made to illustrate one of his classes. So he visited the workshops of some workmen, and he was struck first by their ignorance of the basics of engineering, and second, he was struck by their hunger for knowledge. He promptly opened up his classes to mechanics, offering classes for free on Saturday evenings. By 1804, George Birkbeck had decided to leave Glasgow for work as a doctor in London. He set out what can only be described as a very fashionable medical practice, but he also worked as a physician to the General Dispensary for the Relief of the Poor. He was a keen supporter, again, of the Reform Act of 1832, and he was also involved in the fight to repeal the duty on paper and the tax on newspapers. These may not sound important to us today, but the duty on paper, the tax on newspapers severely limited the ability of people to contribute to political debate and the dissemination of knowledge. The respect he roused among people from all walks of life and political persuasions made him the ideal president for the new institution. And so it was that on the 11th of November, 1823, Robertson, Hodgkin, Place, and George Birkbeck, along with around 2,000 supporters, met at the Crown and Anchor Tavern's Great Assembly Room to establish the London Mechanics Institution. And that was the birth of Birkbeck.